All right, and we're rolling. So I wanted to make this video for a number of reasons. But one being, I've been posting videos of me playing and performing and doing music for quite a long time now. And most of them have been me doing covers or me doing original work or kind of, opening some windows into a bit of my creative process. But I have never been super vocal as an individual in terms of like actually speaking directly to, friends, families, like whoever's listening to my music or whatnot. And so I wanted to make this video. So, for one, if you've been watching my music career or listening to my songs or whatever it might be, and you just have never really had a chance to hear me speak as an individual, this is what my voice sounds like. Also, this will give you a chance to kind of get to know me a little bit as an individual and kind of, you know, give me an opportunity to share a bit of my journey and my experience. For those of you that don't really know who I am, I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of a backstory. I grew up in a small town called Canby, Oregon. And don't worry, I'm not giving you the full like life history, kind of a quick little bit just to get you up to speed of like how I ended up doing music full time as a career and living in Austin, Texas. So yeah, I started off playing piano and singing in church, and that was kind of where I got my musical beginnings from. At a young age, there was a couple people in my life that noticed that I had kind of like a solid ear for music, and because I would sit down at the piano and just pick out these like church hymns or nursery rhymes, and just by ear. And so there was an individual that noticed this, and they said, "Hey, I'd love to kind of teach you some things and give you some lessons." And so I can't really quite remember, but I think it was about 4, 5, maybe 6 months that I took lessons from this individual, and they taught me kind of the basics understandings of all the 12 major keys and the pentascales and those things. And so I kind of took that and ran with it. Along the way, I had taken, brief stints of doing some music lessons, but it never really stuck with me. I just kind of always liked exploring the piano and just finding new chords and finding new patterns and stuff. And so I never did much formal lessons. I wasn't classically trained. I think what really kept me interested in the piano was just the ability to explore it as like a map and just find all these new places and ways to get from one key to the other key. And I learned in a very maybe unconventional way, but I think those are the reasons why I stuck with music. Of course, now looking back, I see some of the opportunities I may have missed as a kid because I wasn't as interested in doing a more formal approach. But hey, it's all water under the bridge, and who's to say that if I had done that I would have continued to build that passion for music. Fast forward to high school, music, my piano playing had grown quite a lot, and I just became really good at just sitting down and playing things by ear. And it wasn't incredibly complex, the stuff I was playing. It was a lot of like pop stuff, a lot of like pop, rock, 60s, 70s, 80s, like all that kind of stuff. And so, I could sit down and figure out the chords, and I could play along with the melody. And so that was exciting. But music, was a big part of my life, but it was always kind of like on the back burner. I got to college and I studied history and geography, and I was really kind of on the path to become a teacher. And I also ran track in college, so I was really into running. Sure enough, in 2020, COVID hit, and suddenly my running career was kind of sidelined. School just became really weird, and I started to second guess if I really wanted to get into teaching. I certainly knew that it was something that I was really interested in and that I would enjoy, I think, to a degree. But I think the final factor that kind of drew me not to move that direction was COVID and the state that the world was in. It just wasn't the right time to do student teaching, and I didn't want to spend all the money to do grad school and then end up teaching kids online. I knew that this window of opportunity was opening, that I could maybe try to give music a shot. And I knew that this was kind of this rare thing to happen in your early 20s, where like the world's in this crazy state and so many people are kind of starting fresh. I basically kind of pitched the idea to my parents of, I'm going to move to Austin. This is kind of going to be a gap year. I'm going to give music a shot, and then I'll probably come back and do my student teaching when kind of things blow over from COVID. That was kind of my plan, but I don't know if I ever really had a game plan for if music worked out. That's kind of crazy to say, but I always just kind of, the cards I feel like have always been stacked against me. And so there's just that part in the back of my head of like, maybe this doesn't work out. And so I kind of pitched it to my parents as this like 1 foot in type of situation. So anyways, I packed up everything I had, threw it into the back of my Toyota RAV4 and drove across the country. Ended up here in Austin, Texas. The first few months, really tough. I was struggling to pay rent. I was out door dashing. I didn't know a single person when I showed up, and I was just trying really hard to connect and meet people. I would show up to these jams and try to meet musicians this way. March of that year, I had moved to Austin in January, and by March of that year, they hold the big South by Southwest convention here in Austin, and so there's just tons of music opportunities around the city. 3 months leading up to that, I was really like this close to just heading back to Oregon. And I had given it an honest shot, but I just wasn't really sure that I could make things happen in Austin and financially survive, because that's one of the biggest struggles as an artist, is like, how do we put our time and energy into creating art, but then also still survive as an artist and like make a living and pay rent and pay bills and all those types of things that we have to do as functioning humans in a society. But then this South by Southwest happened. I got booked all week playing with bands. Now there's some money flowing in, and I have multiple creative outlets to play music with bands and to work on original stuff and also by playing covers. And so that's when I realized, like, okay, I might be able to make this work. And sure enough, from then on out, I had been booked, 3 or 4, 5 nights a week playing shows. And it's been quite a heavy focus on the live performance, and I've played hundreds of shows in the last 3 years. It's been incredible for building my chops as a musician and just getting flat out stage time. But I will say this last year in particular, 2024, has been really monumental for my music career. The main reason is there's been a huge shift from like the live performance to the studio recording. And so this is like what I'm probably most excited about. And this is really why I moved to Austin in the first place, was to write music, record music, and put that out into the world. And so I'm finally really stepping into that and embracing that world. And that's been so exciting. This year I'll have put out 4 new singles. Orange and blue are swirling through my head. Which I'm so excited about. And I'm just a student of the craft. I mean, honestly, I'm really a student of the craft, and watching these sound engineers work and how all these pieces come together and hiring musicians to play on these tracks and bring them to life. Like, man, it's really an amazing thing to see, and just watch like how a song is crafted. There's always something that you can learn from anybody. And so I always try to go into every situation of like, okay, what can I bring to the table? What can I contribute? But also, what can I learn? Because as an artist and as a musician, like, we all have something to contribute and bring to the table. And so, yeah, it's super important to always remember that and not forget that, like, yeah, you might not be Miles Davis or whatever it might be. My point is, there's something that you bring to the table. And that's always important to remember as an artist, because it's so easy to compare, right? It's like, well, I'll never be like as good as this person, or I'll never be this. And it's like, I'm so guilty of that. Like, I felt like my skill levels were down here compared to these people that I looked up to. But then I had to change my perspective and say, hey, you know what? These people are like role models to me, and it should not be taken in a negative light. Instead of saying like, look at me, I'm down here and they're up here on this pedestal. It's like, no. They're showing what's possible in music. And so take that, learn from that, be inspired by that, and then put your own voice out into the world, because that's what we have as musicians. Like, we have our own voice. We each are individuals. Bob Dylan can do something that I can't do. I can do a lot of things Bob Dylan can't do and never did do. That's crazy. Okay? But a lot of the most successful artists in the world's eyes are the ones that really like just went for their unique contribution. So they really like leaned into what made them unique. But that's enough about that. I'll stop yapping. I've always been like a harmony kind of nerd. I've always been a nerd about harmony. I think when I listen to music, like, the harmony of the song is probably what makes me feel the most. And I'm not talking about complexity, because complex harmony is really beautiful. But that's not always what moves me the most. Sometimes it's the simplest harmony that moves me the most, and is a lot of the songs that I like the most are really simple, but it's the way that the harmony is arranged. Simple changes, if they have really good motion, can be really, really powerful. And I think I've always been driven toward that in music. I'm also a really sucker for like slow songs with a lot of feel to them. And elements of that definitely kind of come out through a lot of my original music. Certainly Orange and Blue, one of my recent songs I just put out, is an example of that. Yeah, I would say the last few years, like, doing music full time has been a crazy wild ride and journey. I've learned so much from these experiences and working with so many talented people. My advice for anyone that's doing music in any capacity is surround yourself with other individuals that are going to elevate you. We don't always have the luxury of living in a city where there's just hundreds and hundreds of solid, stellar musicians, right? We don't all have the luxury of just like packing up our lives and moving somewhere. But in today's world, we're all a lot more connected than we ever have been. And so it's possible to kind of join community and find people that inspire you. And then at the end of the day, the most important tool we have as musicians is our ears, right? Like, I always tell my piano students that it's always the first thing we should always do as musicians is listen. Just listen. I'm not always super conscious of this, but I've tried, especially more recently, to be a lot more attentive to listening to myself as I'm playing and as I'm performing, and say, what's really happening here? How's my dynamics feeling? Like, how is this playing sounding? You can gain so much from listening to albums and to tracks and like really breaking down, well, what did this person do here? Or what did they do here? Or what is that chord change? And just kind of getting your inspiration from the source directly. I think that's like the best place to get it, right? I remember like there's different genres of music that I had a harder time getting into when I was younger. I grew up listening to like 60s, 70s, and 80s, like classic rock and like yacht rock and all that kind of stuff. And I love that stuff. And I remember as a kid, I was always really drawn to jazz music as well, especially like during Christmas time, like hearing all those famous jazz times. I feel like Christmas is like the time when jazz gets to shine. It's crazy, but it's like the time when jazz is still like on popular radio or whatnot. But I remember I was just always blown away and like mesmerized by jazz. And it took me a really long time to like start to understand what jazz was and how it worked. It was it was kind of like something that I had to expose my ears to over and over and over until like something finally started to click of like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. And if you haven't taken the time to properly listen to jazz, then trying to play it is really hard. Look, I'm not a jazz cat. I love jazz. I've played a little bit of jazz and whatnot. But I just have like an immense respect for it and love for the genre of music. And so I guess I'm just making a point that like, especially with more complex music, classical, jazz, all those types of things, you really do have to listen to kind of ingrain yourself into that genre. So yeah, I guess that's partially my advice. The other thing is make sure that you're making time for yourself to have other outlets just besides music, right? Music might be your whole life, but it's important to remember that like we're human beings and we have wants and needs, and we have lives that we have to live. We have to participate in society and whatnot, and so it's really important to have like healthy outlets where you can just get your mind off of music. For me, my outlet is running. Like I'll go out and run 8 miles and just get my mind off of all that stuff. It's kind of like a form of meditation. Yeah, that's kind of the gist of what I got to say. Like, hopefully, I know I've just been kind of rambling about random stuff. If you even made it this far, like, that's crazy. You're crazy. Thank you for kind of watching and giving me a chance to kind of put some of my ideas out there and just kind of like open a window into my life where you get to see kind of a little bit of me as an individual and let me kind of just speak and talk. So I hope there's something that you've got from that. And I would love to do some more videos kind of in this realm. It's really hard for me to put myself out there in a vulnerable way like this. And so it's something I want to get better at. And so I would like to do some more stuff like this. If you have any ideas or questions or anything, reach out to me. And it might be something I can use for topics in future videos and whatnot. But yeah, I can't thank you enough if you've been a supporter of mine, or if you've listened to my music, whatever it might be, whether you're a friend, whether you're family, whether you're just like some random listener that somehow stumbled across my music. Like, thank you so much. It really does mean the world to me. The fact that I get to do this passion and work on the craft of music for a profession is like insane. I'm really grateful for all the opportunities, and I'm so excited for all of the really cool stuff that's coming down the road. New singles on the way, hopefully an EP maybe next year, and maybe even an album. So stay tuned for those things. A lot of cool collaborations and a lot of live shows as well. So stay tuned for all those things. Man, there's a lot on the horizon, and a lot has happened in the last few years as well. So I just am trying to stay present and really just enjoy what's happening for however long this journey takes me. I'm so grateful. So thank you so much, and take care. See you guys.